All right, our last class of cnidarians is the Anthozoa, or the flower animals, so called because, like plants, they are sessile. They are pretty much anchored to where it is that they live, and they kind of superficially look like flowers underwater. So these include our sea anemones and corals, both of which are polyp form cnidarians. There are no medusae in the Anthozoa. Some are colonial, like the corals. Uh, Many sea anemones are solitary. Now, these organisms tend to have a large and subdivided gastrovascular cavity. It can be divided up into different areas by wall-like structures called mesentery or septa, just like the septa that divide the nuclei in basidiomycetes and ascomycete fungi. So when you look at a piece of coral that may have washed up on the beach, what you're looking at is the remains of the calcium carbonate skeleton, and you can see an impression of the septa, which kind of looks star-shaped. So that's what you're seeing is the remains of the animal that used to live, or the animals that used to live, and that together formed that coral piece of a coral reef. Many members of the Anthozoa, in addition to their tentacles, have internal thread-like structures called aconcha threads, and these also have cnidocytes that can help sting the prey and help bring them down into the GVC for digestion. They also help function in reproduction as well. Members of the Anthozoa frequently have endosymbiotic organisms living with them that are photosynthetic. If they're green, they're called zoochlorelli, and if they are yellowish, they're called zooxanthellae. So chlorophyll means green, and xanth means yellow. So corals, as I mentioned, are colonial polyp form anthozoans. They can form very large calcium carbonate skeletons for protection and produce coral reefs. And there's an amazing diversity of the types of calcium carbonate skeletons that these tiny little animals can build together. I'll show you an example in a minute here. But here is an example of what an anthozoan looks like if we were to section through it. We can see that it's got tentacles, it's got its mouth, it's got the jelly-like mesoglia and the epidermis. But then in the GVC, it's lined with these kind of walls, or these septa that are in there, that can increase the surface area inside the GVC. So this looks more like what we see in a coral with the calcium carbonate skeleton underneath, but this over here looks more like a sea anemone to me. You can see the hypostome and the mouth and the tentacles around there. In this one you can't see any aconcha threads, but they may well be in there. Alright, so here is an example of a coral reef, and you can see there are many different species of corals in here. One important example of the endosymbionts that live within the cells of corals is Symbiodinium. Symbiodinium is a genus of dinoflagellates. They are photosynthetic and they live within these cells of the corals. And corals typically live in the photic zone where there's light. So while they can eat, they also can take advantage of having a photosynthetic organism living inside their bodies, which will fix carbon and give them sugar to eat as an energy source. And in exchange, those dinoflagellates get protection and a habitat to live in. Okay, so those are our 4 classes within the Cnidaria: Hydrozoa, Scyphozoa, Cubozoa, and Anthozoa. And that's the end of our discussion of the Radiata. And our next stop will be the Bilateria and the acoelomate protostomes. 1